You're listening to the Build to Rent podcast. Build to Rent podcast.
Welcome to the Build to Rent show. Steve Olson here, along with Chase Levitt, to talk about markets today and what we've been seeing, what we've been hearing. We always welcome your feedback and what you're seeing and hearing at Build to Rent or b2rshow.com. And follow us on Spotify, iTunes, wherever you get your podcasts. And we're always happy to hear your suggestions for topics or questions that you may have. We're not promising that we have any of the answers, but we can certainly try and apply it to what we're experiencing in the build to rent world right now. So there's a lot of scuttlebutt out there about markets right now and which markets are going to get clobbered or which already are and what's going on there. So many of the markets we've been in over the last few years are like the headliners. We read these top 5 markets that are going to have bloodbaths and we go, oh, that's like 3 of ours, right? Most notably, we've done a lot in the Salt Lake City metro, in the Phoenix metro, and in the Boise metro. But it's funny, Chase, you think about, people send these articles out, oh, this market's going to be a bloodbath, but does it directly translate over to rental properties, build-to-rent communities? I mean, why should I care that D.R. Horton stopped building or came off 10% on their price in the context of building new rental properties? Should I care? Should I care a little?
I think it's good to pay attention to it. I think more than anything, it's good to pay attention to, okay, what is someone expected to pay for a mortgage payment? Because rates have gone up, and then what can they be paying for rent? What is that gap and what is that difference? And we talked about that a little bit last episode, and where that's such a huge gap, there's going to be a demand or need for renters in the market. Mm-hmm. And so if you're in the multifamily space and you're looking to buy an investment property and you're going to rent it out, it's telling us that you're going to, I guess it depends on the area and what the vacancy rates are and the need, but with what things are telling us that there's going to be renters in the market for quite some time if the rates stay where they're at.
So let me ask this. Yesterday I was talking to a client. He lives in San Diego. He's a longtime client of ours. He's bought a lot of properties with us. And he was mentioning, D.R. Horton backing away from a bunch of land. Is it possible, like on the last episode, we talked about builders hitting the brakes late summer of 2022, not starting anything new, but finishing what they have. There's this fear of finishing what they have and the lack of buyers for that inventory. Are they just going to convert that to rentals and flood the market with rentals and soften the market? Or are they going to have to come down on their price and sell to retail people? Because I'll tell you this, about that time, I got approached by 2 builders here who had investor specials on packages of 30 to 50 townhomes. After I did the numbers, it wasn't a special. I kind of felt like they're looking around like, hey, who's the last sucker with any cash left, right, that we can offload this stuff? It didn't work as a rental. I kind of wonder if they can come down enough on price
a lot of
to make it make sense.
A lot of times they're penciling their numbers for that project or that development, like a D.R. Horton or someone that's doing retail. They're planning on someone to come in and buy that for a higher price per unit and make a profit for that. And so they most likely are probably into a little bit more for the dirt. Maybe they built a little nicer product type and they weren't planning on that. Can they rent it out? Possibly. Maybe some of them can do that. I don't think all of them are. It depends on the zoning too and that location and what the city allows. Will the city allow for that?
Yeah, good point.
In that development, sometimes they have restrictions on how many renters or how many investors can even go in there, like Edge Homes. They only allow so many investors to invest in a certain development till it's capped out.
Well, the mechanism for capping it out would be the HOA. The CC&Rs restricting a certain amount of rentals within a community. So you got to say, is that builder, they're probably still under declarant control, meaning the developer can make whatever decisions they want with respect to the HOA. Could they change that to accommodate like a large investment group that wants to come into a 200 unit subdivision and buy half of it. But I'll tell you this much. In the conversations I've had with these bigger investors, like I had one that wants to buy a bunch of units in our project in Ogden, and I explained to him, based on what you want, you don't want to do that. Our project is owned by 20 dentists, 30 doctors, and 12 attorneys. And there's an HOA. And every single one of these units is its own tax ID'd fourplex or duplex or triplex. You're not going to get the control you want. The HOA already exists. And I think that they're more inclined to take entire projects than fractional projects. I'm really thinking this through right now on the fly, by the way, everybody.
Mm-hmm.
I think a builder's probably more likely to kind of jockey back and forth with price reductions, interest rates, and buy downs to tease those buyers out of the market that are on the fringe of affordability.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Could be. And going back to what we're talking about before a little bit is maybe the builders' margins were just so large because things were so crazy the last 2 years to where, maybe they're not making, I don't know, 75 to 100,000 per unit, whether it's a townhome or single family. Now maybe it's 20 to 40,000, which is still a margin. It's just not as huge. So maybe they've just backed that down and they'd rather take less now so they can regroup, not taking a loss, but definitely taking a hit, and they can regroup and see where the housing market's going.
I heard somebody, this was like on Twitter, so I don't know how to source it other than I read it on Twitter. But he said that the pain that we will experience in the market in the coming year or years, and I don't know how much or how little that's gonna be. People have very strong opinions on that. I don't know, but he said, I thought it was interesting that it's going to be not market specific, but sponsor specific. Meaning, everybody in Phoenix, everybody in Vegas or Jacksonville is going to get slaughtered. No, it's how is that operator, that sponsor, that general partner, how's their capital structured, right? How much debt did they have? What kind of debt? When's it going to mature? When does it have to go to permanent? What kind of assumptions were they relying on in their model? Because you could fool banks to do anything 2 years ago, right? Send them a fancy spreadsheet. Oh, these guys did their research. But, you're planning on 15, 20% rent increases. When all that goes away, I think you're left with what sponsors have the ability to bring more capital or didn't borrow too aggressively. And because that housing thing is kind of sorting itself out. I don't want to say in the background, but there's a permanent renter class, is there not? If DR Horton, I kind of wonder, them having this battle of, do we lower prices and we're selling to Bob and Sue homeowner, there is a permanent renter class, and some of these people are renters by choice, and they're going to be renters no matter what happens with interest rates.
Yeah. Yeah. I got something interesting that I came across. It's off of realtrends.com. Says, knock here, the housing market favors buyers in 2023. Talks about different markets, smaller markets, larger markets, a couple things that we can pull from it here. But it's interesting if you go look at the what they have to say there, the top cooling buyer markets in 2023.
So this is talking about single family homes, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And do you know what they say?
I have an idea. Should we do a live like a live game show thing on the air? Can I do some guests like Family Feud?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, let's do some guesses.
So what are the top 10 cooling markets in the U.S.?
It depends on, I'm going to say they're going to put Salt Lake City in there. And they might even segment that out into, I always think it's dumb. People say, oh, well, Ogden and Salt Lake City are separate. Kind of, but not really. It's the same.
Mm-hmm.
So they might say Ogden. I bet you they're going to say Phoenix, Vegas, Boise. They're probably going to say Orlando, Miami. And then they always put in some of these big West Coast and East Coast markets. So I'll say Seattle, San Fran, LA, Boston, New York,
Not
in DC.
Okay, I'm going to stop you there because you
Okay.
were hot. You were really hot.
Oh,
at
now I'm
first.
gone cold?
You've gone cold.
Okay.
But you hit a lot of them at first.
Okay.
And I want to talk through why I think these are on the list.
Well, out with it, dude.
So number one is Ogden, Clearfield, Utah. And we have a microscope on that market, so we can talk about it here in a minute. Number two is Las Vegas. 3, Phoenix. 4, Austin, Texas.
Oh, how did I miss that one?
5, Colorado Springs, Colorado.
Really?
6 is Dallas, Texas.
Huh.
7 is Denver, Colorado. 8, San Francisco, California.
Hey, I got that one.
Number 9 is Greeley, Colorado. And then number 10 is Salt Lake City, Utah. So I was kind of surprised.
Greeley, see, they really break these mountain states metros into multiple metros.
Yeah, and I was surprised
Yeah.
we didn't see anything in Idaho because they've been
Yeah.
hashing on Boise quite a bit. But
Yeah, that's the whipping boy lately.
But I think the main reason, why do you think it's the top cooling market? You know, is it because it was the hottest market the last couple of years? And so, yeah, it's going to be, if it cools just a little bit because it was so hot, does that make it the top cooling market?
Yeah,
that
yeah.
make
What
sense?
does
You
that
see what I'm trying
really?
to say?
What does that really mean? Like, because it insinuates that, oh, you're in trouble if you own in one of those markets. But
That's your initial, when you read
Yeah.
that, be like, oh man, I got some properties here. I don't know if I'd take it as that because there's still opportunities in those markets.
yeah,
I just think they were so crazy the last 2-3 years
that they're backing off.
that they've cooled down a little bit, but I think it's a safe cool down.
Yeah,
It
probably
could be
so.
a healthy cool down. That's just kind of what I wanted to throw out there
Mm-hmm.
with that.
Well, job markets, population growth. You know, I read an email from a property manager in Boise here on the show a couple of weeks ago. I asked him if people were moving out of Boise. And he said he's seen some of it. They're not coming in like crazy during COVID, because during COVID it was get away from government policies you don't like and from skyrocketing costs to somewhere that's a lot cheaper that's going to let you live your life, or so the pitch was for places like Boise. And now there's a little less reason for that, but it's not gone. So,
Yeah.
well, we'll see. Like a cooling market. It goes back to this. You own an apartment building in Arizona. Is a cooling housing market going to affect you? I would maintain that with higher interest rates, that eventually it's going to affect you for the better. But, you know, there's one thing that the market is really good at, and that's overreacting. We saw those rents just go insane, absolutely insane. That's not sustainable. So is what that article saying? So rents and prices.
Yes.
Is it just more of a, okay, let's come back to
Because prices were going insane.
something logical? And are we there yet? So we'll see. What were the markets they liked?
So from this is from Realtor.com. 10 housing markets expected to lead the nation in 2023. Let's see here. You don't want to guess any of these, do you?
Well, I bet you they're not going to have this one on there, but I'm doing a fourplex project in the Fort Wayne, Indiana metro, which was ranked by the Wall Street Journal as is one of the top 3 last week. But I bet you Realtor.com is not going to put that on there.
Not on there. Nope.
Okay.
So number 1 is Atlanta, Georgia.
See, I would have thought that one went into the stratosphere and needs
Atlanta,
to cool off
Sandy
some.
Springs, Marriott.
Huh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Raleigh, North Carolina is number 2. Number 3 is Dallas, Fort Worth.
See, what
kinda
was that
had our
other
eyes
one
on
that
that a
just
little
said, didn't they just say that was poised to dial back, or is that a different list?
It was Dallas. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Come on, realtors.
Yeah. So they're kind of, there's 2 different,
Yeah.
they're going against each other here a little bit. This was one that caught my eye because I know this area quite well. It's Fayetteville, Arkansas. So Woo Pig Suey.
Yeah, Chase
went to
played
school
baseball
there once,
for
yeah.
Pig Suey.
So
Yeah.
Fayetteville, Springdale, Rogers, beautiful area, huge college town. They're listed number 4 to just blow up. I think they've already been blown up. Great area to live, great people. Greenville, South Carolina is number 5.
I've been looking at a couple build for rent deals in Greenville. Very surprised by the rents.
Mm-hmm. Charleston, North, Charleston, so must be on.
Uh-huh.
That's in South Carolina. Huntsville, Alabama. Number 8 this is on our radar, is Jacksonville, Florida,
Mm-hmm.
meaning Florida's on our radar. San Antonio, Texas was
You and
number
I've
9.
been to San Antonio a couple of times.
We've kind of had that on our radar, been looking. And then Knoxville, Tennessee, we've talked about a little bit as well. That's number 10.
I really love Knoxville. Oh, there's a barbecue place on the river there that I went to once after a football game that was so good.
Yeah.
Okay,
I
somebody
don't know.
knows it. Yeah.
Just some interesting data there. I don't think you have to live and die by it, but it's good to see what some of these people are saying on what's cooling down.
But
or what's
somebody
hot.
is saying Dallas is good and somebody is saying Dallas is bad.
Yeah.
Right? It what's your objective as an investor? What are you trying to do? But also like have that I love the movie The Big Short. And he's kind of a cult favorite, Michael Burry of Scion Capital. He was the guy in the movie that I think he had Asperger's or something. He had trouble relating to people, and that in a way made him a better investor, at least during this particular time. I'm not vouching for what he is or isn't doing now. I have no idea, frankly, but he would read these big legal documents, stacks of mortgage-backed securities. And he would see the low credit scores that for all these crap loans that were being originated. And in his mind, his inability to relate to people, when people, you're stupid, just go along with what everybody is doing. He just couldn't do it, right? He was looking at the data. So I think it's important that you look at the data. There's a lot of talk and a lot of emotion in the market and in the news media about everything. But what do you like about Dallas and why? What do you hate about it? And why? You could look at it as a market where prices went really high and now they're due to back off some. Are people still moving there? What's their supply like? What are the interest rates like? What are the choices like on multifamily? If you drill down on that and you believe in that data and it tells you a direction to go, and somebody on CNBC, Diana Olick is on there, Dallas is going to fall by 15%. That probably doesn't matter. It really is. You've got to look at those numbers and don't get swept up in the groupthink.
And the other thing, too, it could be specific, too. I mean, Dallas is huge, right? Some of these markets are huge. And so it just depends on where you're at within that market, too.
Yeah.
West side, north side, south side, in between somewhere. What's currently there and then what's coming in. So it can be pretty specific, and that's why it's good to have boots on the ground, whether it's someone that you know and trust, to give you an understanding of that city or that location of where you want to go. Mm-hmm. And something more importantly, just go there yourself and get your boots on the ground. Drive the area, spend some time, understand what jobs are in the area, what's coming in, job growth, understand vacancy rates and what the need is for what you're trying to do. So just get your boots on the ground, start talking to people. And just by doing that, it takes time. There's value there because if you put your time and your energy in doing that, you're going to get a better understanding. So that's the best way to do it, is just get your boots on the ground.
Yep, absolutely. Get to know that market because there's so much noise out there right now. Mm-hmm. And if you've got the courage to do build-to-rent projects right now, hats off to you. You know, it's a turbulent time. There's a lot of noise. There's just that concept of we do the best research we can today to see what we think the market is going to be like by the time this product delivers. And we think it's going to work, but guess what? You don't control that.
Yeah.
Like I said, if it was easy, everybody would do it.
Yeah.
Cool. Everybody, thanks for listening to the Build to Rent show. We'll catch you next time on another episode where we'll have more information and we'll update you on our trip to Boise. And I've got a trip to, I think, no, I won't have gone to Phoenix yet. So, and I've got a trip to Hawaii coming up to look at some rental properties.
There you go.
Never thought I'd do that. I still wonder if I'm crazy, but
you are a little bit.
There's enough reason to go. So yeah. All right. Thanks everybody.
Thanks for listening to the Build to Rent podcast. You are now just a few clicks away from joining our community of Build to Rent investors. All you have to do is follow our show on Facebook, LinkedIn, or wherever you're listening to this podcast. You can also watch this episode and more by subscribing to the Build to Rent podcast on YouTube. The information presented in this podcast is general in nature. Nothing in this presentation should be construed as financial advice or recommendations for any particular situation. The hosts are only licensed to provide advice and services in the states where they are specifically licensed, and listeners should seek the advice from an appropriately licensed professional in the area where they invest. The examples presented in this presentation are for illustration only, and no guarantee that similar results can be achieved, since the facts, circumstances, and participants are all different.